We are all grown-ups. We are all grown-ass people. How dare you tell another grown-ass person, please don't ask me any more questions.
Keep teeth off the leash. I feel like a dog. I can't have the flea. Keep it pee. Never needed you, but you.
Welcome back to my channel, everybody. My name is Mackenzie. I am a nursing student, and here on my channel we talk about everything nursing related. We talk about nursing school. We do a little couple vlogs. I even talk about a little gym stuff here and there. And on today's episode, y'all have seen that I'm talking about some little secrets, you know, I'm letting y'all in on the tea. Clinicals are not talked about enough. I just feel there's so much stuff that goes on within clinicals that I just want to talk about. Like, this is the confessions of a nursing student, clinical edition. Clinicals are not always the most fun thing in the world to do. Now, some clinical rotations are going to be extremely fun, and some fun clinical rotations are going to have bad days that are super duper slow, because you got to think about it. Not all nurses are willing for you to actually do stuff on patients. Some nurses are like, look, I've had nurses like, look, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And I had other nurses who just sit there and you literally just watch them. And those are not the fun rotations, and those are not the fun nurses, you know. I hope one day when I am a nurse, I am the nurse that lets you do whatever. Like, we have to learn. Like, and if I never learn, if you never let me do it, then how am I ever supposed to learn? And FYI, I know it may be too late in the video, but I am at the gym. I'm about to do a quick little video before I go to the gym. So this is my gym background. I got in a little spot that's real thin, and people park crazy, so I'm like scrunched up in this parking spot. This is one that irks my nerves. Some nurses do not want you to follow them around. It's just like, it sucks. Everybody was a student at one point in time, and why would you not want somebody to follow you around? I don't know. It's just, you were a student, and I get it. Like, sometimes having people with you kind of slows you down. You were a student once too. Like, you know how it feels. I literally had a girl in my mother baby rotation whose nurse was like,
don't ask me any more questions.
What? We are all grown-ups. We are all grown-ass people. How dare you tell another grown-ass person, please don't ask me any more questions? To me, that was just really rude. And I just, it was another instance where I had a classmate who would tell me about a time when she was in her rotation, and the nurse, she would ask the nurse questions. The nurse would not respond to her. She would act like she wasn't there all day. And then she had the nerve to tell the teacher that my friend in my clinical rotation like had an attitude and she didn't want to be there and stuff like that. But just like, what? Like, man, just because you people are nurses, it does not make them a good human being. It does not. Like, being a nurse does not, because it's some mean nurses that are mean to patients, peers, workers, everybody. It is mean overall. Next, so let's talk about my behavioral health rotation. I really like my behavioral health rotation. All we did was sit there and play with the patients. So we would play card games, board games, puzzles. We couldn't give meds out. Aww. So it was really nothing for us to do in that rotation. We even used to go to the gym and play basketball with them, volleyball. So the way the hospital that I had my rotation is set up is that they have one unit, one floor, or not even a whole floor, but it's like a part of a floor that's dedicated to the mental health patients. And they have one side for adults and one side for the pediatrics. We would go to the adults early in the day, and then we would go to the adolescents for a remainder of the day. Or sometimes we would just spend most of the days in the adults, because sometimes the adolescents would be like a shutdown. I mean, one time they had like a COVID outbreak, so we couldn't go as a precaution, whatever. And then one time one like broke out, they were on lockdown. So we got to play games with them. It was a lot of just talking to them. And you just really get to understand that a lot of these people are just normal people. You know, a lot of them are, look, I'm just normal. You think I'm crazy? Like, no, I don't think you're crazy. But I must say, a lot of the mental health rotation, a lot of those patients at my hospital were schizophrenic with like psychotic episodes. That was very common. I was like, wow. And it's crazy because some of those stories can be very believable. You'll be sitting there with these patients and having a conversation, and then they'll talk and you think everything normal, and then they just say something, you just like, hold on, I don't think that, I don't know if that's true. Then it hits you like, oh, they're sick, you know, like mentally they're sick. Okay, I get it, but some of these stories are super convincing. We did have this one instance. This was like the craziest story that I've witnessed in my mental health rotation. On that unit, in that behavioral health unit, the nurses station basically is like behind a clear window, and then you have the milieu? It's like the area where their rooms are, and then like they have tables and everything, but the nurses sit behind glass, you know, that, and everything is like, everything on these units are like, you have to use a key to get in and out of everything because you don't want to risk the patients getting out for their safety and the safeties of other people. It was this one day where we were split up. The adult side was also split into two different sides, right? So me and a couple of my classmates went to this side, and it was a patient in there who was just, I don't want a black nurse. I don't want a black nurse to give me any medicines. He had like a younger black male nurse, and he was just like, I don't want a black nurse to give me any meds, whatever. He just kept going off. And the nurse was so calm about it. I applaud him, because everybody would not be able to do that. And he just got up and was like, all right, like whatever, you know, like he didn't say that, but he just was very calm about it. He was like, you don't want your meds? All right. And then one of the girls kind of got upset about it, and that became a thing. I have an older classmate, and he was looking at him, and he pointed at him, and he was just like,
I'll butter your biscuits.
He was like, he can give me the meds. He was like, I'll butter your biscuits. And he just like started making like sexual advances at him. And then the other girl who was like offended by the racial comments started going off, and so they just told us to go back behind the glass walls nurse station. And we were back there. My older classmate, who's like, I think he's like 60 or whatever, he looked at my older classmate and pointed at him, and then stuck his middle finger and was just like, you know, like you know, just making all types of sexual advances. And that was just so crazy. My pediatric rotation, if y'all are new here, then I just had my pediatric rotation. If y'all been here, if y'all gang, y'all already know. I absolutely loved my clinical rotation, like loved it down. It was so much freaking fun. I got to do so much. I got to give out so many meds. My clinical rotation instructor was just so willing for us to do whatever, and everybody on that unit was just like, yeah, do this, like, yeah, come on, like, you know, I got to do so much. Like, they let us try inserting catheters. I got to just do so much G-tube medicine. I got to do so much, set up so many IV pushes, set up so many tube feeds, so many IV lines. I actually got to go in the MAR and like actually like know how to work the MAR. A lot of hospitals, you pass meds through the phones, so I got really comfortable with passing meds through the phones. I really loved it. But only thing about the pediatric rotation is just like not getting attached to these patients, because it's so freaking easy to get attached to these patients. Oh my gosh, you hear so many of the stories, and then you see them, and then our patient population like is the population that they went through traumatic events, and they had just came from the ICU, so I don't know really what you would call that, and all of them went through trauma. And some of these stories, man, you're just like, wow. I guess because I just have such a good heart, I just assume everybody has a good heart. Nobody wants to see their children in pain. Nobody wants to hurt their children. Like, how could you hurt your child? Every incident isn't like child abuse or whatever, but it's just like the stories that these kids go to, and some of them are so resilient that they come out on top, or like they just beat the odds, you know. Like some of those patients should have been dead, but they weren't dead. Some of them were brain dead though, and it just hurts your heart. When it comes down to your pediatric rotation, you need to be prepared to have thick skin, because I still think about those stories to this day. It's about 3 patients from my pediatric rotation, and I've been out of that for about maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. 3 weeks to a month I've been out of my pediatric rotation, and it's like 3 patients that I still think about to this day. And I knew it was one patient in particular that I just looked at him, how could I ever forget you? I want to know what happens to you, because your story just breaks my heart. And I remember when I became a CNA, my teacher for my CNA course was a pediatric nurse, and she would tell us about these stories. How did you cope with it? And she was just like, you know, sometimes she would just break down to her husband, and I get it, because it would be times that I just would want to break down to my mom about certain kids, because their story just affected me so much. You just hold on to that, and you just need to release it, you know? Just be prepared to be very emotional during that time. Now, let's talk about my mother baby experience. It was supposed to be labor and delivery, but we couldn't do labor and delivery at that hospital. But we were able to see a C-section. I think I seen a C-section on my first or second mother baby rotation. And then I seen an actual vaginal birth on my last day of clinical rotation. Now, the C-section, it wasn't bad, but I knew that after that I couldn't be an OR nurse because of the lights. I have migraines, and those lights I could see being a problem for me, starting to be a trigger for my migraines. It was a crazy experience because I've never seen that before. I didn't know how it worked, and I actually watched this doctor cut through a lady's abdomen, and they basically rip open the muscles and stuff like that. I literally seen this doctor ripping open these muscles. And these people behind, they have anesthesia, epidurals or whatever, so they don't feel it. But I'm like, wow, you have no idea what's going on behind that sheet. And it was just I'm just sitting there oh my goodness. But it was, once the baby comes, it's such a beautiful experience. But my labor, the actual vaginal birth, I was like, I want to be a labor and delivery nurse. I still to this day would not mind being a labor and delivery nurse, but I have applied to pediatrics and NICU, PICU and stuff like that. So I want to go that route. But it was such a beautiful moment. I literally cried. When I tell you, I literally was in there crying, oh my goodness, this was so beautiful. I know every experience won't be that beautiful because everybody's pregnancy situation is different, but it was just so beautiful, to see a mom, a dad, and they're so happy about it. Have a support system, the dad was just so supportive. It was just so, it was just so beautiful, and they're crying, I'm crying, oh my gosh. The baby actually was kind of having a hard time coming out. Mom was pushing. The heart rate started going up, so the doctor was like,
oh, look, we'll have to use a vacuum.
And I actually got to see a vacuum assisted birth, and you hear about these in your class, but to actually see them suck the baby out of the vagina with the vacuum was just, oh my gosh, I really get to see this in real life, But that was a really good experience. I just wanted to do a little quick my little confessions, my little quick little experiences to give y'all some insight on clinical rotations, because people don't really talk about it like that. And well, as I've seen, and then it's always sometimes glamorized, and you don't get to the nitty-gritty of how these nurses sometimes don't want you around. A lot of times they don't want you around. Especially my med surg experiences, they it's the med surg nurses are look, I don't want you around. But that pediatrics rotation was hands down my favorite. They let me do so much. My mental health rotation, I think I just learned a lot of patient therapeutic communication with my patients. It really made me more comfortable with those, not awkward conversations, but I guess awkward conversations, because you don't know what's liable to come out of anybody's mouth, especially during the mental health rotation. And you kind of have to know how to respond to certain situations and respond to certain patients in a therapeutic way. And if you're not in nursing school, that's one thing you'll learn when you're in nursing school. They teach you therapeutic communication. I think we learned it in our mental health class. We learned therapeutic communication, which is important because you really kind of need to know how to talk to patients of any kind, any specialty that you go into. But thank you everybody for just supporting my channel. Like this video if you found this useful. Comment any video ideas that y'all would like to see, and subscribe to your girl. And again, thank you everybody for all the love that y'all have been showing me. Thank you. Bye.
Sliding both ends, dice rolling on the Las Vegas strip tonight. Slip that on and we might miss the fight. Fuck a night, I keep the wallet in my shorty bag. You know she wanna mine when she tattooed that ass.